The Rolling Stones return with their first album of original material since 2005. Was it worth the wait, or is it a hard pass? Stay with us and find out.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Eric, another new release.
Yes.
This is the second one this year, right? Metallica was the first one. That came out this year, right? We did that with Andy?
Yes, we did. Yep.
Yeah.
Another new release from a veteran artist.
a veteran artist.
That's right.
Oddly enough, we just did a Rolling Stones. We did our first Rolling Stones episode this year in May.
We did.
So this is they have a distinction of getting two episodes in the same year. Same artist. We don't do that. Usually we wait. If we're going to revisit the Beatles, we give it a year and we, let it marinate. But this kind of came up hot and heavy.
Yeah.
And we needed to react to it. And we've got a guest with us. So if you're watching on YouTube, you've seen him sitting there patiently waiting with his Rolling Stones shirt. He's got the Rolling Stones kicks. I don't know if he's wearing them or he has them to the side. But he is a Rolling Stones fan. So we needed someone to help us with this. Rob Distefano or Distefano or Gaetano, one of those. He's a man that goes by many names, but Rob is a fan of the show and he's a good friend of mine as well. So when I was kind of thinking about doing the Stones episode, I kind of said to Rob, you're a Stones fan. He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, well then let's do this. Cause for new albums, we really want to get extra people in here, especially if they're a fan, to kind of give a different perspective, much like with Metallica, right? And with Andy, he was a Metallica guy, so he had a certain perspective, and Eric and I would have a kind of more of an outsider's perspective. So,
thank you for having me on. It's great to be here.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
You've made it through the first 2 minutes. So, so what are we talking about? Well, as of the recording of this episode, the Rolling Stones have put out a new album called Hackney Diamonds. Which came out on October 20th. So as of the recording of this episode will be less than a week after that album came out. So we like to get to, when we do a new release, we like to get to it pretty quick. Hopefully we all gave it a few listens so we can kind of get, sometimes first blush listens are either really correct or sometimes it needs to grow. Like our friend Andy said, sometimes it's a grower, not a shower, and it grows on you. Yeah. So let me get into the stats, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about this, and we'll get into Hackney Diamonds. Like I said, released on October 20th, 2023, produced by Andrew Watt, Eric, who is now gaining a reputation as a guy that produces these legacy artists. Yeah, because he produced Patient Number 9 by Ozzy, which we did last year. He just worked with Iggy Pop. Mm-hmm. On his album, which came out, I think earlier this year as well. So he's kind of getting a reputation as someone who can kind of work with these older legacy artists and kind of not update the sound, but kind of knows what they need, I guess, right? Because in the case of Ozzy, we kind of enjoyed the Ozzy stuff that he did. Andy thought some of it was a little derivative, but at that point,
it's going
yeah, you're going to want, that's kind of what you want from Ozzy. You don't want Ozzy breaking new ground anyway, especially, at that point. So all the songs were written by Jagger and Richards, excluding, there were 3 that were co-written by Andrew Watt as well. And a little bit of trivia for Rob. This group was formed when JFK was still president. So
they've been around longer than me.
If you want me as well, and that's an amazing statistic because there I don't know if there are any bands that I think Eric and I think we talked about the Who might be the only one that retains at least 50% of the original members. Mm-hmm. And that is still like as a performing musical concern. And the Stones were formed in 1962. So that's just insanity.
It is. They all came up together. these bands, but yeah, some of them are still, I mean, it's amazing, but we'll get to that. I mean, it's just, I mean, I just got to have to throw it out there. I'm impressed. I'm really, really impressed with what they're doing. And it's, it's amazing. So, okay, let's
start there. Rob, what are your impressions? What was your impression of this album? As the resident Stones fan, right?
Yeah. It did, like I had heard the first song "Angry" on the radio beforehand, so I kind of got an idea just from hearing that song. I kind of had an idea what the album was going to sort of sound like. At first listen, I do have to admit that I was a little nervous because I know their last few albums, I don't know, it's tough with the Stones because they're such an iconic band and they have such iconic albums that sometimes it's difficult to listen to their more modern stuff without comparing it to their older stuff.
That's right.
And it's really not fair to do that. Their albums from like 68 to 74. I mean, hardly anybody can touch those albums.
Mm-hmm.
But the first listen through on the album, I had a positive look on it. In my opinion, it may be a little bit overproduced.
Oh, you got to one of my questions down at the bottom, which we'll talk about. We'll have to get to that. We'll have to get to Andrew Watt, who is kind of that. He is the kind of the guy that is responsible for the successes or the criticisms as well.
What surprised me with him is that he got writing credits on 3 of their songs, and
that never happens.
Mick and Keith never do that.
That's unusual. Yeah, for sure.
Even like Ron Wood, he had written like some songs with Jagger when he first joined the Stones, and he never got writing credits for that. And so I was very surprised to see somebody else getting a credit.
And someone with such an extensive pop background.
Yeah,
because he produced artists like Justin Bieber, and you think that, and
Dua Lipa,
and you're kind of like, okay, so you, Rob, I could see why you would be nervous if you knew this going in, because what kind of album is this going to be? There's guest stars on this record,
right?
And is it going to be that type of album, which tend to be a little kitschy, a little bit?
Yep.
At this point, everybody's getting older, so we're all buddies now. Let's just get together and do this kind of thing. But I have to agree with your assessment of the production. A little bit. It is a little. It's a little bit. Not too much, but it is. Compared to what they've done, they're so used to being so much more grittier and warmer. So it is but I have to say the songs are strong. This is a solid rockin' album. And I was, after the second or third listen, I was all in. I was, and the guest stars on this thing, they play an incredible role. It's just, I was just very, very pleased with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So before we get to the behind the scenes of it, I'm going to I'll throw in my 2 cents. I love this album.
Yeah.
This is unexpected. I'm not the biggest Stones fan. I don't hate the Stones, but it's not a group I go to. So in listening to this, wow, I was really gobsmacked. Like I think it gave, and we'll get into it a little bit as well. We could talk about the production, which we absolutely will. We're not going to get too deep in the weeds with it, but we need to talk about the sound of it. But I felt this is what the Stones are good at delivering. It's got the riffs. Mick Jagger sounds like he hasn't aged a day.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's the key. Like that could have sunk this album is if he wasn't in good voice, and sometimes excessive touring will do that. Look at, look at John Bon Jovi. He can't really sing anymore. Vince Neil can't really sing anymore. these guys, the Stones are out there every year like clockwork touring. You would think his voice would probably be worse for wear. On this album, I was like, if someone didn't know when this was from, you may have a hard time pinning it because I think he sounded that good.
Yeah.
True.
He was invigorated. Like there was some excitement and punch behind his voice,
Mm-hmm.
One experiment I did is I took this album after I listened to it a few times, and I sort of put on a shuffle with some of their older albums with it, and it didn't sound any different.
It meshes well, right? It meshes well with their catalog.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, which is high praise, I think. So let's go into this a little deeper. Their last album was a cover of, it was blue, all kind of blue. It was called Blue and Lonesome. It was a covers album.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, their last studio album was 2005, A Bigger Bang,
which I liked a lot. I think I've mentioned that on the Tattoo You episode, which I was very impressed with that record because at that point I was thinking, this is an album that shouldn't sound this good, be this good, being that they're so, getting up there. Typically artists are just
almost 20 years ago and you're saying they're getting up there.
Right. Well, I'm just saying it's incredible to me that they could still, give us something. And that's very rare. Artists of this
age
group, of this vintage. Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Mick Jagger is 80 years old. Keith Richards is 79. He's going to be 80 later this year.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Wood is 76.
Wow.
Yeah. And 80. Did we ever think? Well, let's get back to the history first. I'm getting sidetracked because it's such an exciting. I think it's going to be such an exciting conversation. 2019, they started to kind of get together. Charlie Watts was still alive, and they're kind of like, okay, let's kind of start talking about a new album. The pandemic occurred. Mick Jagger didn't seem too interested anyway, and kind of not a lot of enthusiasm. Keith Richards had developed arthritis, so he needed to figure out a new way to play guitar. He needed to kind of adapt. And then, so they'd finally kind of gotten some stuff done. They had laid down some basic tracks, and then Charlie Watts passes away. That kind of spurs them on. That's kind of like, that kind of was like, mortality staring you in the face. You know what? If we're going to do this, we got to get it done. We got to do it. Paul McCartney suggests, hey, get in touch with this guy, Andrew Watt. Because he's worked with a lot. He's working with these legacy artists, and he really seems to have an ear for what each one needs. And he's worked with Eddie Vedder as well. He's in Eddie Vedder's backing band when Eddie Vedder goes out on solo tours. So, he did all the pop stuff, the Miley Cyrus and all that, but he's got a foot in both worlds. He does a lot of hard rock as well. So McCartney says, yeah, look this guy up. Mick Jagger did. He agreed. He goes, let's take a look at Andrew Watt. They met him in the studio and they said, all right, let's just start doing this thing. The output was so prolific that they actually have 75% of another album ready to go, of a follow-up if they want. It's like that. That's kind of how prolific these sessions were for them. And then, like Rob said, Angry was the first single that kind of came out. A great choice. Harkens back to kind of an old style, maybe a little Start Me Up-ish, with the stop and start riff. And then the second single that was released was Sweet Sounds of Heaven, which came out which has Lady Gaga in a really high-end supporting role.
Yeah.
And Stevie Wonder on keyboards and piano, really kind of playing the shit out of it. I mean, Eric mentioned there's some guests on here, but I like the way these guests are used. So you've got Paul McCartney plays bass on Bite My Head Off. You've got Elton John on
upright piano.
Yeah, on two songs, I think Elton John is on. He's on Get Close and Live by the Sword. Charlie Watts. There were two songs that Charlie Watts completed before he passed, or at least the backing tracks was Mess It Up and Live by the Sword. And then Andrew Watt was able to convince Bill Wyman to come back and play. And he hasn't played on an album in 30 years, on an original album. So he came back for Live by the Sword. So you do have on the track Live by the Sword, you've got the Stones. You've got I think we said it in the Tattoo You episode. Ronnie Wood we calling him an original Rolling Stone at this point. Even though he succeeded 2 other guitar players.
Yeah.
He's an original. Would you agree, Rob? He's an original at this point. He's.
Yeah, for the longest time, he was still the new guy.
Yeah, he was a paid employee. And then they made him a partner. So, so for that one song, "Live by the Sword," you've got all 5 Stones, which is a really, I think, a nice. If this was going to be their last album, or if it is, I think this is a great way to go out.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely,
I agree.
And here I am thinking Elton John. I'm thinking he's going to come on with that low voice and and just be doing some kind of like a duet kind of thing and just cheesy, whatever. I'm like, I was blown away by this.
Yeah, he just plays piano.
Track. He just plays piano. They're deep in the mix. These guys are playing with the Stones. They're not just duetting with them, just in their own little bubble. They are in the mix. McCartney's bass is in there, man. It's like, and that's the one thing I do notice, and I never thought that I would miss. But it just shows you how important Charlie Watts was, because you do tell the difference. Steve Jordan is a phenomenal drummer, he tries to do. He's very laid back on this album. He's typically a little bit more adventurous on the kit. But yeah, when those 2 songs back to back, and you could definitely tell, that's the Stones, man. And it's nice to have that anchoring the record.
Yeah, because Charlie's snare has a certain snap to it. It's got a certain, and if you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to miss it. But if it's a particular sound. And Steve Jordan was with The Expensive Winos. He plays with Keith Richards on his solo endeavors, and then after Watts passed away, Steve Jordan became the drummer for the Stones. So, Rob, what about this album? Kind of for you, says it can stand with some of the earlier works.
Definitely the 2 singles that they put out. The Sweet Sounds of Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, that sounded like that could have come off of Exile on Main Street. That could have fit right in there with that. It was just a great song. If I had one critique on the song, I would have loved to hear a really nice piano solo in that song, or like a slide guitar. But outside of that, the song was great. I guess the one thing that's great about this album, that in their last few, maybe there isn't really a weak song on the album. I'm noticing. I mean, at least the 4 or 5 times I listened to it through, I mean, they all have their place. They all can stand on their own. It doesn't feel like there are any fillers songs.
Yeah,
it seems like they put a lot of thought into all of them.
Yeah, they have different feels. Yeah, it's not just I think one of the things with the Ozzy album that we talked about, Eric, was some of it sounded a little redundant.
Mm-hmm.
The guest stars like Jeff Beck, you kind of had lamented that it sounded like his solo was kind of pasted in there and kind of inserted.
Yeah.
Whereas on this album, you're like, McCartney's just playing bass. It's not like McCartney's singing with the Stones, and Elton John is a guest musician.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they're trying to tamper with the Stones formula by having these other people that those gimmicks, right, of having McCartney sing. It's just like,
right.
No, he plays like a really overdriven fuzzy bass on Bite My Head Off, and Elton John is in the back as a performer, playing keyboards, which is really like it's more guest stars or almost more like glorified session players.
And they're definitely hearkening back to the time when they were doing this kind of music too, like Elton back in the day, when he was doing this kind of funky type of stuff. Same thing with McCartney, in the early post Beatles, early Wings, he was doing some kind of that kind of stuff too. Yeah, I was just really pleased to hear that. That was so cool that it's not just on the surface kind of thing, and it's just layering like the Santana thing when he did that entire album with all these different people, and not once but twice, maybe 3 times, I think. I don't know at this point. You could definitely tell, but this guy seems to know what he's doing. I mean, I think he's a very talented producer, and he knows music, so I'm blown away.
So let's talk a little bit about Andrew Watt then, about the, and Rob, you mentioned overproduced, and I wrote it. I one of the last things I wrote in my notes was, could this be, and I'm not saying it needs to be. Think about it though. Could it be less produced, or does Andrew Watt bring a sensibility that makes this, he didn't really update this. It's not like he updated the Stones sound, but he made it a little more modern sounding. And there's a difference there, right?
Yeah.
He didn't try and change, he didn't wholesale change what the Stones were. We're going to do something different. But yeah, the production can be a little thick at times. I mean, there's a lot of, the Stones are known for kind of bare bones, right? The kind of dirty, Aerosmithy style, of that kind of performance and songwriting. So you had said it was overproduced. So is standing on that one?
I would say, I mean, I'm coming from, when I started to get into the Stones, it was right around late 70s, early 80s. And it was just like a little bit more of a raw sound. I mean, I know you have to move on, and you have to, sort of try to fit in with the times. And, I can understand the production that they did. I mean, it's probably also this part of me being an old time rocker, liking that stuff. But I mean, not that I don't like it. It's just it took a little bit of getting used to hearing it that way. I guess that's the way I would.
Well, I mean, here's the question: Are the Stones still in there?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right. As opposed to some of the other stuff that they tried, like in the after Tattoo You, they kind of were doing like the Harlem Shuffle, and some of that stuff I think was more off the mark than this. I think this is like, you listen to this and you don't really have a doubt that it's the Stones.
Right. That's true.
I totally agree.
And it's not like like when Queen did Hot Space, where they decided to totally veer into like a disco thing and totally like change it. And I think that's the great thing about this album is, and I it's kind of like I wrote, what more do you want? Like, what more at this point would you want from a Stones album than this? Right? I'm not sure. Like, I read, I mean, all the reviews I read are great, except for one guy really blasted these guys. They're like, their songwriting isn't really saying anything. And I thought for a second, I'm like, these guys were never Bob Dylan level lyricists. Like, they don't say, they talk about getting women is basically their thing, right? It's like, so I was thinking, and it's like, well, they didn't tread any new ground. I guarantee you, if the Stones put out an album where they tried to sound totally different, people would be like, at their age, why are they trying to do something different?
True. That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it was a catch-22, and I think this was the right move because, like I said, I listened to from the first listen too. I was hooked. I'm like, wow.
It would be pretty much raked over the coals at this point if they just totally went off the deep end and did,
Yeah, they would have been like, oh, stick to what you know. You're old guy, You get that. You get
Exactly.
stuck in that. You get stuck in that box. But, and they could have done a Rolling Stones album, and it could have sounded tired. And I think that's the difference. Is Mick Jagger sounds energized. Like, I think he's the key. I think he is the key because he is the attitude of the band.
Yeah, I definitely see his touch in a lot of these songs. Even though it's Jagger Richards, you can definitely tell that it was maybe a little more Jagger than Richards here, with the energy of the songs and everything. Keith tends to be more of the bluesy guy, but yeah,
it's a nice balance. It really is.
Yes.
I like that. Tell Me Straight. I think it's great. His vocals on that song, I think are
Yeah, he gets it. Keith Richards gets his obligatory one track.
But again, he sounds youthful. It doesn't sound like, it has just the right age to it because it fits the song. It fits the mood of the song. And yet it doesn't sound like he's, like the way he talks, you could barely understand a word he's saying. And here it's every word is clear. It's, precise. And I think a lot of you have to give the credit to Andrew Watt on that, I think. And I don't know if he used any kind of technology, do you think, on this album? Or we talking like auto-tune a little bit, maybe? Or I don't really see it. I don't really hear it. But could it be possible, do you think?
I don't think with Keith. I think Keith, he's not a great singer, but he knows how to sing. And that's the difference.
He stays within his lane. He knows what his limits are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question, Eric. I don't think the Stones would go for the auto-tune stuff.
No, I mean, the second song, Jagger's voice, I think he purposely, he sounds like he's out of tune.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's on purpose because it's just the attitude of it.
Get close.
And that's Jagger. Like he'll go off like that. He'll not even finish his thought like in a word. Like he'll just yell a word out and sort of in the live setting especially. But here I've heard albums where he's done that too. Like so.
Yeah. I don't think you can. I don't think it probably helped the Ozzy album, right? I think Ozzy probably needed that little assist.
That's right.
Mick Jagger's a different vocalist, right? He is a blue, for lack of a better term, he's a bluesy singer. He's a blues singer. So, I don't think you're going to be auto-tuning that. You're going to kind of let it rip. I'm sure there were other studio tricks that we used as far as production and kind of smoothing things out a little bit and kind of really quote unquote polishing the diamond. But I don't think it's in the vocals. I hope it's not. I want to believe that.
Well, there's one track in particular that I think it's Bite My Head Off, where there's a lot of backing vocals, which is you don't really hear that on Stones either. That was surprising.
That's true, yeah.
And I kind of thought maybe Paul is in there somewhere. Could be, could be possible. I don't know, but that was unusual to hear, because typically it's either them, but it's just one or two voices, but then or they'll have female backing singers, those really soulful, ladies in the background just doing their thing, and this sounded like a bunch of guys, almost like a rock and roll band with four or five guys singing backing vocals. So, it was just kind of layered on top of one another, which is, like I said, a little rare for them, but good. I mean, the song itself is just, kicking, I mean, it's hard edged. It's like you say, Dean, has that fuzzy sound to it. It's like, it's plugged in. It's loud. It's aggressive.
Yeah. It's like, these are 80-year-old guys.
Yeah. They're dropping F-bombs in the song. And I'm like, damn, here we go.
I think in Angry, I think Mick Jagger's like, we haven't made love and I want to know why. Well, because you're fucking 80 years old. That's why. I think that might be why. I don't know if so it's funny that they're still up to their old lyrical, and maybe that's the thing too. They're not trying to be the wise old men of rock and roll.
It's very tongue in cheek. There's some lyrics in here that it's very self-aware. They know, but it works. It definitely works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. They're not trying to sit on a porch and give us the wisdom of what they've done. They're back just to blast and have a good time. I would be shocked if they didn't incorporate some of these songs into their sets. I mean, they don't have their set is a virtual jukebox anyway, but I think any one of these could stand with them. Honestly. I don't think that's an understatement, Rob. What do you think?
No, not at all. I mean, I as I was listening to the album, I was trying to look at it from a live perspective, in a concert. And like you said, pretty much any one of these songs they could add, and it wouldn't detract from the concert. It would, it would a lot of upbeat songs, a lot of catchy songs. I mean,
I love Mess It Up.
Yeah.
With Charlie, and you can really hear Charlie Watts playing on that. It really's got the snap in there, but that song sounds like it reminds me of something like She's So Cold, or it has that same kind of like Jagger strutting, and that's what I love is he really was able to channel this stuff without it being too nostalgic, but this is what the Stones sound is, right? And they were able to, and maybe that's what Andrew Watt is good at, is maybe he's like the guy that can understand what these artists need. Like he was able to understand what Ozzy need, like what Ozzy's wheelhouse is, right? Like where Ozzy can really hit the home runs. And I think that's what he did on Patient Number 9 is he delivered for Ozzy what the Ozzy Osbourne experience should be maybe for people.
Yeah.
And I think with this, I think he kind of understands what the Rolling Stones experience should be. It should be like balls to the wall. It should have the crunchy, gritty riffs. It should have, Jagger just like squawking and strutting and pouting and do like you could literally hear, like when you're listening to him, you could hear like him pouting and you could almost hear him. Like, you could hear him going like doing the motions that he does, right? Because it's that ingrained into what the Stones are, because they as of late they've become just a visual band. They're just a touring band, right? So that's all we've known them as okay, yeah, they go out, they do their greatest hits tour, they make more money than almost anybody this year, except for probably Taylor Swift. But they've beaten Taylor Swift in the past with their tours, so they're known more as the legacy jukebox band, which a lot of these artists, and Eric and I have talked about this many times about Billy Joel and Dennis DeYoung and some of these other artists that say
Fleetwood Mac,
we're not going to put out anything because no one wants to hear it,
right? Mm-hmm.
But then you get stuff like this that comes out, and it kind of proves that it probably has to do with the I think the band has to be invested in it first, and you can get the best producer in the world, but I think if the band's not invested in it, because you can hear it, like you can hear in the grooves that he is really into it. I mean, do you agree with that, Rob? Or you think that's kind of, these legacy bands kind of they just tour, they do their greatest hits, but their recording is not even like on the top of their top 10 things to do.
Yeah, and from what I heard, I think they recorded this in like 4 weeks.
Yeah,
so I mean
they banged it out.
Yeah, so I mean they definitely had the magic right there, I thought I had read somewhere also that for a while, like Jagger had no interest in writing any new material, and then I don't know, I guess it just sort of gelled together, and they,
that's all you need, man, is a bit of inspiration from somebody.
Yeah,
somebody with youth and vigor and knows what he's talking about, and I think that's what happened here. I think the chemistry is there. They're like Dean was saying, they're very excited to be on this record, and it's a joy. It's an absolute joy to listen to. And we can't say that it's their, obviously we're not going to say it's their best album, or, you, like you say, Rob, you can't really compare it to the golden age and, the legacy that was their, Exile on Main Street and Let It Bleed and albums of, like that. But yeah, man, I'm a big fan of Tattoo You. That was my gateway Stones album for me. And that's not even a real album per se. It's more of like a leftover record, but it was so strong then. This kind of reminds me of that up tempo, that sort of snappy, type of thing. And just, it's of a very particular time. And it's the best time for me as a fan, but not like a diehard fan, but yeah.
And it's also a breath of fresh air to me, being a guitar player. Most music you hear nowadays, you don't hear any guitar.
It's true.
And
this is true. Yeah.
It's great to hear like a nice guitar riff in a song.
Chock full on this album. So it's great stuff. And like I said, on Sweet Sounds of Heaven, we've got Lady Gaga, who they asked her to come in. I think they almost hijacked her. And she said, I think she's like, they just told me to come into the studio and I didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what was going on, what they wanted to do. So she was trying to replicate those backing singers that Jagger used to use in the 70s and just have those hot, she's not trying to overpower the song. She's kind of in the background. You almost wouldn't know it's her because she sings so high that it doesn't even sound like her. It's just got that. It's an epic closing. Technically, it's not the closing track because they do a cover for the closing track. Is Blues,
Muddy Waters. Yeah, man. Yeah,
first time they've ever done that song, but it feels like it is. if Rolling Stone Blues is almost like an after, it's almost like an epilogue. It seems
Mhm.
like Sweet Sounds of Heaven really kind of closes out the whole experience. And then you get a really traditionally bluesy, song with the harmonica, and it's got the, so it shows that they're also hearkening back to their roots, So
Yep.
they do have if you wanted something stripped down, that very last song, Rolling Stone Blues, really gives you like the traditional feel, and I think it's probably nice for them to kind of play in that sandbox for a little while, because you can probably get lost in the sauce, especially when they were kind of, after they kind of, mixed emotions, whatever was that, Steel Wheels.
Yeah.
They kind of got a second win there, and then it kind of petered out again. The output started to kind of decline again.
Yeah, that was the last album with Bill Wyman, right?
Right, yeah.
That was his
Yeah,
last.
Steel Wheels.
Yeah, so that's like 30 years he hadn't played with them.
Yeah.
So it's just a great feeling that, it's good to see these bands kind of succeed again, that rock, and this is part of the conversation too, is, where and Eric and I have talked about this off of podcast or maybe on some of them, that, we're going to be in the age that we're going to be losing a lot of these artists. These guys are fucking 80.
I was just talking to someone the other day, and I was saying, within the next 5 to 10 years.
Tell us how you really feel, Dean. Jesus Christ, I'm getting depressed here. He's fucking 80.
He's fucking 80. I mean, let's be real.
You wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know it.
You would not. But the reality is, we're entering an age where our heroes, and especially the Stones, like I said in the open, the Stones have been together since Kennedy was president. So the Stones have been an enduring presence in rock and roll, whether either from a recording standpoint or young people going to see them on tour. And we talked about that in the Tattoo You episode. I asked Eric, I said, can they claim they are the world's greatest band? And we said, yes. I think now this kind of rubber stamps it. I think this
cements it.
Rubber stamps it. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And for all these years, for these young kids making fun of them, here's the proof in the pudding right here. I mean, this is an album that from a group that does absolutely not need to prove themselves anymore. I mean, it's,
right.
And they put something like this out with such energy and such, it's just a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Like in today's climate, because I don't know what's going on with music today, to be honest. It's just, yeah. So I absolutely.
And from a songwriting team that usually is usually fighting more than they're friendly.
That's true. More often than not. Yeah.
A very contentious relationship between Jagger and Richards. Mick Jagger will be saying something about Keith Richards. 2 years later, Keith Richards is dragging Mick Jagger, and then they come together and they're happy for a while. And then they say something, like they've always been able to be real with each other. And that's probably part of the enduring thing. Just like Daltrey and Townsend, they can come to blows, but then they but that's what friends can, friends can do that, and not, the band doesn't explode because they kind of realize, and they've been together so damn long.
And I think it's because the mutual respect as musicians, they know they got the goods, and that's the thing.
I think they know they need each other too.
Exactly.
Neither
Egos clash.
Successful outside. Yeah.
Each have ideas, but egos can clash. But it's but they know at the end of the day, I could count on him.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's what they could count on each other. So it's
and it's not like Mick Jagger had like Phil Collins level success of solo work, right? So he kind of he's made solos and they weren't successful. So he kind of there's that symbiotic relationship as they kind of know where their bread is buttered. They know that the Stones are kind of something special that outside of it, it just for some reason the magic isn't there. But having this group of people and this style of music that they return to. Just really amazing. I mean, we're gushing about this album because it's, it's out on all the streaming platforms. So everybody should absolutely give this a listen because, I was surprised, but I wasn't shocked. Right. In listening to cause I had heard Angry also, and I'm kind of like, this is catchy. It's kind of throwbacky, but it could have been a one-off. It could have been, we've had albums before where the lead off single is like the best you got. And everything else was just like throwaway.
No, it just gets better.
Yeah. So after listening, I mean, whole wide world.
Yeah.
Just a banger. I have Angry, Whole Wide World, Mess It Up, Tell Me Straight, and Live by the Sword.
Yeah.
are kind of, and Live by the Sword is really kind of grungy Stones too. It's kind of that, you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. Those kind of lyrics, I don't see like I said, the one bad review, the guy really savaged them and kind of really took him to task. I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think the guy was going to be, I don't think the guy was going to be happy either way. If they had done something different, it's like, oh, how come you're not staying with what you're
right.
Yeah.
Live by the Sword almost has that, just like I said before, that sort of Leon Russell. And I'm so pleased by that. I'm so glad that it's not, it's Elton John checking his ego at the door.
Yeah.
He's not coming in like, I'm big, I'm, whatever. It's like, no, he's, like you say, he's in the background. That's one of my favorites. I love Sweet Sounds of Heaven. I think it's, oh God, I was a little iffy about, but I totally love Lady Gaga though. I think she's got the good, she's so talented, despite, her, whatever reputation or on, sort of first impression that you may get.
Yeah.
But I know that she's, because she does the things she does because she needs to, because nobody would take her seriously as just a singer. I almost honestly feel like A Star Is Born. If you ever seen that version of the film, that's her story. When she tries to go like pop in the movie, it's like, like she's trying to do something new because she feels she has to. And then it's like taking it back down and it's like to be real and all that. It really speaks to who she is as an artist, I think. But I think to come in and do this with the Stones and man, she's just killing it. And that live performance, I don't know if you guys seen that over the weekend. They performed it. It was the party.
They did in some like small club, right?
Yeah, the launch party of the album.
Yeah.
She was there, and they performed it live, and that's even better.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Look it up on YouTube. Yeah,
Rob, what are some of the highlights for you, Rob?
Definitely the Sweet Sounds of Heaven. I could definitely hear that being played live and being incredible.
Show closer.
Yeah, definitely. Dreamy Skies is definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. No Expectations is one of my favorite Stone songs. And it definitely has a harken back to it with the slide guitar and everything.
Yeah, yep.
I like that sort of country type of blues type of songs that the Stones do in their albums. Get close is another good one. That's a good rocker. Like I was saying before, there isn't really a weak song on the album. You don't have, super great songs like, like on Let It Bleed and stuff like that. There's not, I don't think there's that type, but there's definitely enough songs on this to hold it together and make it a complete album.
I think it's a grower and a shower. I think it's going to be one of those ones that kind of it's an easy, I put it on. It was like a breeze. It wasn't a challenge. It didn't, I don't mean that in a bad way, meaning it was kind of like, once you got into the groove, it was like, I feel like I know what this album's going to be like. It's going to be Stones. It's good. Like, I'm not going to be yanked out of the experience by something strange. And that's exactly what you want. You want to be able to kind of take the ride.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll get to an album, you'll listen to an album and you'll like skip through some songs.
It gets a little repetitive. I think the Metallica album suffered from a little from non-fans. It was kind of like, okay, these things kind of all the intros start to sound a little bit the same. Yeah. But with this, it was everything was, because the Stones have had so many different styles. They've had like the start me up kind of stuff, and then they've had the grungier stuff. Actually, one of the songs reminded me a little bit about the intro of Beast of Burden. I can't remember what it is off my head, but one of them is like kind of intro starts like Beast of Burden. I'm like, so yeah, there's those, they're kind of checking off the boxes of nostalgia, but the stuff is still fresh. It's not like they're rewriting these songs where it's like, that's the riff from, Honky Tonk Woman, and they're reusing it. They're in their lane, but the stuff is fresh and it sounds new. Now, I had a thought. This is just I want to get you guys' opinion on this. Because you have Stevie Wonder on this, you have McCartney on this. You have Lady Gaga on this, and it got me thinking about some of these older artists. It would be cool if they kind of made like a collective, not a group, but they kind of played on each other's albums, like as almost like as a band, but not like a traveling Wilburys where they sing, but meaning that like these guys kind of make an agreement to kind of play as session musicians on each other's albums. Because I really like the notion of Elton John playing on an album, but not without him singing on a Stones album. That's not what I go to the Stones for. I don't go for
Right.
a gimmicky duet. But it would be nice for then McCartney to make an album and have some of these other, like they kind of, a lot of these older artists kind of make like a collective or, a community and just kind of play on each other's albums. It would be a fun experiment if they did like 3 or 4 artists.
That would, because they're not, they're, they could retire, but they could still play. They could still
and have fun and have fun with it, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's what this album is. This album is fun. I think that's what it is. This album is just fun to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's got youthful energy that like I said, that betrays the age of these guys. And I don't want to harp on the age, but I think it's important to understand that the uncharted territory of rock and roll, right back in 62 when they formed, and this was not a long-term career. This was long hairs. What are you guys going to do? There was no path forward. And now, I was thinking about it. I'm like, what does it sound like for an 80-year-old person to make music, to rock and roll? We don't really know, because we're only now hitting that.
Yeah.
Right. We're only now getting to that threshold. And I think the Stones have shown that if you've got the will, you can, you don't have to go and retire with an acoustic guitar and play slow songs because you're older.
Mm-hmm.
And even McCartney. I mean, McCartney's over 80 as well, and he's out there still. He's a guy that's going to do different, like you're going to expect different things from McCartney. And it's kind of like, okay, well, this is McCartney because he does different things. These guys knew the lane, or Andrew Watt knew what it needed to be. And I'm going to call it a home run.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at the personnel here. Don Was, additional production on Live by the Sword. He's got a little hand in there as well. And that's not surprising. I would have thought that he would have worked on Dreamy Skies, because that sounds like something that he would have produced.
Yeah.
Andrew Watt, bass guitar, percussion, keyboards, backing vocals, string arrangement, mixing on Rolling Stone Blues, production. He does a lot. Yeah, he basically played bass. Their touring bass player, I guess, was at the sessions, but he's not credited on the album. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Daryl Jones. Yeah,
so Watt pretty much took that. But the guy's got the chops, I guess. So what the one review I read about. We'll talk just a little bit more about Andrew Watt. This is for people that are into producers. One reviewer called him the anti-Rick Rubin. Okay,
I could see that.
Now, if you know anything, we've covered albums by Rick Rubin, and Rick Rubin is a very hands-off producer. He's less of a producer and more of a person that says, I think this sounds good, or this, like that. Like he's more of he's actually probably more of a consultant. Whereas Andrew Watt is, he's gets his hands dirty. He's playing instruments with the band. He's doing this, he's doing that. He's shaping the sound. Whereas Rick Rubin kind of is the guy, he sits in the control booth. He kind of works the knobs and tends to he's almost like a supervisor,
Yeah.
And the reviewer was like, Andrew Watt is like the anti Rick Rubin, which made me think. I'm like, yeah, well, if you know anything about Rick Rubin, it kind of makes sense.
I could see that. Yeah.
Right.
It makes sense. It makes sense to me. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But it's not a bad thing, right? I mean, the guy could be, is on the way to carving himself out. He's already carved himself out a serious career. I mean, he's produced Post Malone. I mean, he's produced like all these big acts. So he's
That's the thing, though. It's like we keep saying it, but it's like he didn't change the sound of the Stones. Oh. He made a great Stones album, and who could do that today? I mean, let me put it out there. Who do you think? Who else could have done this for them? As production wise,
I don't know. And I think if they tried to produce it themselves, it probably wouldn't have.
Yeah, probably would have been probably less energy. Probably would have been like, we can't seem to get this thing going. Kind of. I could almost see that happening.
Yeah,
in a sense. And so you need somebody young. You need somebody
Well, that understands, right? That
Yeah.
understands the artist as well. And
True.
again, and you're not trying to reinvent the wheel at this point, unless that's what they're saying, right? If they're saying, yeah, we want to do something different, but I don't think you want to hear a different freeform jazz like Spinal Tap, like you don't want that left turn at this point in the career. It's kind of like this is,
Yeah, the first time I listened to the album, I was sort of like hesitant, but then the more I listened to it, the more the songs grew on me. I think it was for me, it was more of a grower.
Yeah.
And at first, I think I was going in with too much of a critical mind.
So you were expecting a disaster.
Instead of just sitting there and listening to it, yeah. I was critiquing everything that I was hearing, and not, and I think that was clouding my judgment on it.
Well, it's difficult when you're a longtime fan.
Yeah,
like that's it, it's the same of all of us. I guess whoever we're into, something new comes out, and then when that something falls short, and you don't want to admit it, too. Yeah. It's like you
want to like it despite that
happens a lot. These people can do no wrong in our eyes, but it does happen. So, but in this case, not.
You get jaded. I like listening to Jumpin' Jack Flash for the thousandth time. It's like it's like it's tough to change gears, but I was pleasantly surprised with the album. It's
so let me ask you, Rob, then in the discography of the Stones, is this not their worst album? Is it their weakest album? So this kind of could leapfrog a few titles then.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, in fact, I was looking at a list of their albums, and I was trying to. I would definitely, I think, put it top 10.
Really?
Maybe around 10.
That's a bold statement.
That's high praise.
Right? Yeah, that's high praise.
Yeah.
And they've put out like how many albums? Like 40 or something?
I think they only have like, we're talking maybe
26 American studio albums. Yeah. So there's probably some 24th British albums. So there's probably some compilations.
There are some Stones albums where I like certain songs better than any of the songs on this album. Mm-hmm. But as a whole, this one, I think, is a little more together,
I definitely agree with some I heard. I didn't read a lot of reviews on it. I didn't actually look at anything in prep for this. I just listened to the record. I just wanted to come in and just give my own. But now I'm kind of like looking through right now, and I'm seeing somebody said it's the best album since Tattoo You. Yeah. I'm going to agree with that 100%. In fact, I think it's better than Tattoo You at this point. That's saying a lot for me because I love Tattoo You. But I totally agree with that. From the later standpoint, this definitely is. Yeah.
What do you think about that? Post Tattoo You? How does this fit in?
I would definitely agree with. I don't know if it's better than Tattoo You. Tattoo You has got it's got a place in my heart, but
yeah, it's tough.
But I would definitely. I mean, as far as the best album since then, it's definitely part of the conversation there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I'm thinking of Dirty Work. I think it's better than Dirty Work. Steel. Yeah, I would definitely put it ahead of the other albums since Tattoo You.
And I don't think I'm gonna guess you're not even grading it on a curve. Meaning you're not. Again, I don't want to bring the age thing up, but it's important. It's not like you're giving them extra points because of their age and they were able to pull this off. This is just a solid record, despite that, or in spite of it. That it can fit in with their discography, especially since, and there's been almost a 20-year lapse since a studio album. So it's not like these guys are banging stuff out and then it's kind of like they took a long break and were able to kind of recapture. And maybe that's what they needed, was that break to kind of, because they said whenever they would get together, obviously through the years, it was just to rehearse for a tour. There was never any discussion of songwriting, any any get-togethers they had was tour rehearsals.
It also threw me when they said it was 18 years since their last studio album. I was like, wow. The Bigger Bang didn't seem like it was that long ago. It was like, wow.
I know.
Yeah. 05.
And that's
right?
that's the one and only time I actually saw them was on that tour. But I can't believe it's been that long. it's just
and they were in their 60s.
Yeah. And we thought that was old. Like that's when everybody was coming out of the woodwork saying these guys should hang it up. Even then.
And that's the funny thing is you make a really good point. Is the goalposts keep moving?
Yeah.
As these artists kind of, you expect Clapton to retire, right, at a certain point, and they even say they're kind of tired of doing it, but then they keep going out again. They go out. Bowie retired, 800 times before he passed away. Elton John retired multiple times, and then he retired again. But, Billy Joel went into a period of seclusion and then has reemerged. So they kind of keep moving. They kind of keep moving that goalpost around a little.
Yeah, like one of my favorite vocalists, Robert Plant. The thing I like about him too is he knows he can't hit those high notes anymore.
Yeah.
And he knows what he can sing, and he stays in his lane, and it's great.
Yep.
And so there's one aspect of it, and then you have the Stones, who show no signs of aging.
Yeah.
Mixed voices.
It's amazing. It really is. That was the takeaway from this album was it doesn't sound like you listen to Bob Dylan's last album, Rough and Rowdy Ways. He's not the same, his vocal. You would think he was drinking 5 scotches a day. He's got his vocals. He sounds different. He sounds older. And there's an allure to that. I don't think this album would have worked if he was all froggy and throaty and trying to. He really rose to the occasion, and I hope it wasn't studio tricks. I've never seen him on tour, but they tour incessantly, so I gotta think he's able to kind of perform. That keeps himself, I guess, relatively healthy, and his voice just.
Oh yeah, no, he works out a lot. He keeps in great shape.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely going to help your vocals and everything.
That's because he hasn't made love and he wants to know why. It's fine. I found that lyric just very fun. I'm thinking about wait, this guy's like 80 years old. And he's saying we haven't made love and I want to know why. But then he's like, don't be angry with me. So maybe there's some issues that he's alluding to that answered that question. We don't know, but so let's kind of start to kind of put the bottle on this. What like we do for these when we do these new albums, we do give them a grade. So let's start off with Eric, since you kind of started off the conversation by really saying how you dug the album. Let's go with you. What do you give this album?
I'll give it a solid. I don't want to. I really don't like giving it like perfect scores. I really don't. But I definitely give it like a 4.5 stars.
What about a letter grade?
5. A letter grade?
Yes, sir.
Oh shit,
that's easier.
Yeah, probably.
Leeway. You got a lot more leeway. You got pluses, minuses.
Let's fuck it. Let's give it an A.
Nice.
I'm just gonna give it an A.
All right.
Rob, no A-, no A, but right in the middle there.
A. Yeah. Rob, the Rolling Stones fan, who was trepidatious about it at the beginning. What do you give it? What's your grade on this?
My letter grade would probably be like a B+.
That's probably more accurate, but but I'm just excited about it. I don't know. Maybe it's just still in me, So anyway, I'm sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. At least for me, it's not in that pantheon of the late 60s, early 70s.
Not yet.
I do have to listen to it some more. But it's also not a clunker either. It's a solid B+.
Yep. He lost his mic. There he is.
All right.
I'm gonna go with an A-. So I'm gonna I'll split the difference.
Okay.
I'll go with an A-, which is basically like a B+, right?
Yeah.
No, I think it's really fantastic. I mean, we're really lauding it, and I hope people get the excitement from this episode and give it a listen, even if you're not a Stones fan, because I'm probably, out of the three of us, probably the least Stones fan.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I've been listening to all weekend by choice. It became, I need to listen to this.
Yep.
And then it became, I want to listen to this. Right. Which is a really great testament for an album. It's like, okay, we have to, when we do new albums, we have to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we have to. It stopped becoming that, I think, by yesterday or Saturday. I'm like, well, I want to listen to this again because there's some songs I really dig, and I was just impressed with the achievement.
Yeah,
and I think that's part of the who would have thought that we would have been cheering for like the Stones as an underdog for putting out an album, right? Because usually something like this will come and go. Some of these older artists, this stuff kind of comes and goes, but I think I think the hype behind this album is genuine. It's real. The Stones are the real deal. They're never known for miming or doing kind of crazy tricks and stuff like that. So, I want to believe that this is just all genuine. Obviously, there's production involved, but it sounds like it's there in the grooves. It sounds genuine to me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So there it is.
Yeah. So we've got an A, a B plus, and an A-, which averages out probably to an A, which is good. It's right where it should be. Any final thoughts? If there's one song, Rob, you're going to direct people to on this album, say this is my one.
It would have to probably be "Sweet Sounds of Heaven."
Sweet Sounds of Heaven.
Yeah, just because it.
Yeah. To
me, it's
echoes of "You Can't Always Get What You Want" a little bit, not exactly, but echoing that.
The thing I liked about it the most is that it had vintage Stones sound to it, but also modern Stones. It had both.
I think that's
it's also the longest song. It's at clock
7 minutes.
7 minutes and 22 seconds. So, but you don't feel it. You don't feel it.
No, absolutely not. Eric, one song you're going to give people to say, what, this is really exemplifies the album.
That's really tough.
It is.
I want to say "Sweet Sounds of Heaven," but I think I'm going to go with "Live by the Sword."
Yeah, good one.
I really dig, just the whole feel of that song, the sort of funkiness of it. And Elton John really impressed me on that. I was expecting something completely different, and it just really, I was so pleased to hear that funky piano again that he just, he doesn't really do anymore. Like it's more ballads and just sort of, poppy kind of thing. And just maybe Andrew Watt could help out Elton John too. Just to go back to that sort of, he was a big fan of Leon Russell back in the day. And don't shoot me, I'm the piano player and those types of albums and Honky Chateau. And that was the time for me, but so I was really impressed with that. So that's probably my favorite.
All right. I'm going to stick with "Mess It Up." I think that really kind of
it's a good one too.
kind of represents that dancey side and that kind of disco-y, funky side of the Stones as well that you kind of got in the late 70s when they started to explore a little bit of that stuff. I think there's something for everybody on here. I think this album, like I said, it's not a ripoff, but it does look towards the past but all the Stones albums do. It's not like the Stones were always doing something different. They there's a formula to the Stones, and that's why they're so successful. And I'm glad that again with Andrew Watt, his vision or his guidance, whatever it is, that they were able to kind of get this done and hopefully see the fruits of it. I'm not sure I want another album after this. It's like kind of like
no. But
is this is this the way should this be the one? Should this be their Led Zeppelin, to quote Led Zeppelin? Should this be their swan song?
It wouldn't be a bad song. It wouldn't be a bad album to go out on.
Mm-hmm.
Although I was enticed by hearing that they had like 70% of another album.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be a great. I mean, the fact that they had all these guest singers, guest people on the album would make it a nice way to send everything off.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree.
I mean, as a Stones fan, I
You
keep
want
them
more?
coming.
You want more? All right.
Keep them coming.
I'll tell you what, though, I'm gonna start listening to more. Like, this album really got me into Andrew Watt, so I want to seek out him more as a producer. I want to start checking out other things he's done, and hopefully, he just builds and builds.
Yeah,
It's amazing there had to be such an eclectic taste in music. That's what you need. Someone who understands, all forms of music, and that's great.
Yeah. Well, you know what we'll do, Eric, is we'll drop a link in the show notes to Andrew Watt's discography or the stuff that he's produced. We'll link to the Wikipedia. In this case, if anybody's really interested in kind of seeing what a producer does or the breadth of artists that they can work with, because he is kind of the modern day guy that's everywhere. There are certain. Almost like Jimmy Iovine in the 70s. The guy was everywhere. He was producing everybody. His fingerprints were on everything. It seems like Andrew Watt is that guy now that's kind of crossing boundaries and just working with a whole eclectic stable of artists. So I think that's going to do it. Rob, you made it through.
He did.
You did it.
Well done, sir. Well done.
I had a great time.
And you weren't black and blue at the end. Get it?
Got to do it. He's got to do it.
Go to your kitchen and make some goat's head soup.
Oh, God.
You didn't need
this is the price you have to pay for being, Dean's got he's got one for everyone. So
pun after pun. The puns never stop. Don't let the pun go down on me, from Elton John. Anyway, before it gets too out of control and before Eric just decides to blank the screen out and go, we'll put a bow tie on this. Check this out now. It's called Hackney Diamonds, which is actually a term from London. It was actually stands for broken glass, because the Hackney area of London would see a lot of crime, and it would always be broken glass. So on the floor, the shattered glass was called a Hackney diamond. That's where that came from. So basically,
interesting.
That means shattered glass.
He's all.
I'm not letting you know about trivia. I mean, that's what I do. That's what we do here on the 3324 podcast.
Trivia king.
we bring the trivia. We bring the guests. Rob Distefano, thank you so much.
Yes,
for joining us. You have passed the test, so you are welcome back again. Doesn't have to be the Stones. It can be
anytime. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get you on for. I know you love movies as well, so we can get you on for a movie episode too. But
that'd be great.
Maybe a top 5, because you always give us. You always comment on YouTube with your top 5. So I think you should be on a top 5 with us then, because your picks are also very interesting as well.
Yeah.
And they kind of fit right in. So, Rob, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. The album is called Hackney Diamonds, and you guys can check it out. It's available right now. And of course, Eric, we will be in our seats for the next episode. We will not move until the next episode comes out.
We're locked in our rooms.
But luckily enough, we'll be in different clothing. But that's a whole other thing. We'll leave it there. So, for Rob and for Eric, this has been Dean, and we will catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.